23andMe wasn't just a tech startup. It was a genetic empire, a $6 billion empire built on your spit. Millions signed up to decode their health, ancestry, and identity. But just a few short years later, its stock has plummeted and the board has vanished, forcing its co-founder to claw back the company through a non-profit shell. And this led to a terrifying truth that your DNA might end up in the hands of hackers, foreign actors, or worse.
A major cybersecurity breach at 23andMe led to personal information from millions of people going up for sale on the dark web.
One of those databases was even used to catch a serial killer. Another found for sale on the dark web. So what happened? How did a company this big with that much power collapse this hard? To understand how 23andMe lost everything, we need to understand how powerful it once was. They didn't just crawl out of someone's garage. It launched straight from the heart of Silicon Valley. In 2006, Anne Wojcicki co-founded the company alongside the geneticist Linda Avey and her biotech executive Paul Kusensa, with Anne leading the charge. She was tech royalty. Her sister, Susan Wojcicki, was running YouTube, and her ex-husband, Sergey Brin, co-founder of Google, with a mother who was the author of How to Raise Successful People. From the beginning, Anne had two things every startup founder craves: access and attention. With the support of Google and Sergey, Silicon Valley jumped on the opportunity. 23andMe became a buzzword almost overnight. They turned spit into a spectacle, throwing DNA-themed parties where celebrities lined up to give samples. They set up booths at Davis, and they showed up at Fashion Week. It was all the media could talk about at the time. Time magazine named their DNA kit the invention of the year in 2008. The idea was sleek, it was scientific, and just edgy enough to feel like the future. They shot straight into the stratosphere. But this ultimately proved to be just the calm before the storm. Beneath the media glow and the celebrity spit samples, there was a much bigger issue quietly lurking in the background: the business model. It was flawed from day one, and somehow nobody noticed until it was too late. The truth is, they built their empire on a product most people only needed once. You spit in the tube, you get results, show it to a few friends, maybe found out you're 3% Scandinavian, that's it. You never need to do it again. It made for great press, but terrible recurring revenue. Even early customers said it outright. The tests were interesting, sure, but life-changing? Not really. And they never figured out how to get people back. So they pivoted. Enter 23andMe Plus, a subscription service that promised ongoing health updates, lifestyle support, and new discoveries based on your DNA. This turned out to be a disaster. Less than half of the subscriber members that promised investors ever showed up. And when pressed on the missed targets, executives admitted it plainly. They misjudged the demand. Then came another swing: Total Health, a $1,188 a year bundle that added blood tests, doctor access, and a deeper DNA analysis with zero insurance coverage. And again, the results were mediocre at best. Most users didn't want to spend the grand on a health subscription they couldn't bill to insurance, and 23andMe couldn't convince them otherwise. At this point, 23andMe was heading for a slow and painful decline. While they were busy trying to fix the business model, another problem hit. Turns out, when you start giving people medical information based on their DNA, the government wants to double-check your math. Enter FDA. In 2013, they told 23andMe to immediately stop selling their health risk reports. Why? Because the results weren't always accurate, and when you're telling someone they might have a high risk of breast cancer, not always accurate is a very bad look. So, the company was forced to scale back. With disease predictions and health reports gone, they could still talk about ancestry, but the medical part of their product was effectively shut down. It took 2 years and millions of dollars in behind-the-scenes work to get back in the FDA's good graces. By 2015, they were finally allowed to resume selling some health information under strict new guidelines. It was a win, without a doubt, but it also exposed something deeper. 23andMe wasn't built to move slow. Like most Silicon Valley companies, they scaled first and figured out the rules later. Except can't really do this because unlike a superficial rideshare app or a dating site, this was deeply personal and as such, different rules apply. Move fast and break things doesn't end well. Following the FDA roadblock, 23andMe was charging ahead. Fast forward to 2021 and it was finally time for the victory lap, going public. But the pattern followed and this ended up being a prelude to the fallout that was heading their way, because it turns out they didn't take the traditional IPO route. They went the faster through a SPAC backed by none other than Richard Branson, which seemed like a perfect fit. And when it debuted on the stock market, the valuation stood at $6 billion. Anne Wojcicki, still the face of the brand, took home $33 million in stock that year. While definitely not unusual for a founder, it raised some eyebrows. Quietly, the company was building a kind of biotech wonderland. Their new Silicon Valley office came with yoga studios, meditation spaces, and a chef-run cafeteria called 23andEat. But none of that could distract from one brutal truth. Revenue was shrinking. Their big bet, the drug development, wasn't panning out either. The partnership with pharma giant GSK had started with big ambition and even bigger PR. By 2022, GSK walked away, and with it, the lifeline they had clung to suddenly disappeared. Predictably, revenue continued to fall, and with its fall, the layoffs also increased. By 2024, a quarter of the staff was gone. The stock was worth a measly $1, which the Nasdaq didn't approve of. This was confirmed with a message that all but said, improve your price or get out. And through it all, Anne never gave up control. Thanks to super voting stock, her say was final, which meant that even as the company spiraled, she was still steering the wheel, even though the vehicle she was controlling was headed nowhere fast. Following the slow decline, the breach was the implosion, and all trust that was left was akin to the snap. In 2023, a hacker going by the name Golem exposed 6.9 million user profiles. All of it, family trees, shared ancestry percentages, was taken down. And with this information now exposed, it quickly ended up on the dark web. First, the company tried to downplay it. It told regulators it was, quote, only 14,000 accounts. But that number didn't hold. Turns out, the actual figure was closer to half the user base. This was a racially charged anti-Semitic hit job, and the backlash was vicious. Privacy experts tore into 23andMe for lax security. The UK data watchdog hit them with a provisional multi-million-dollar fine. Class action lawsuits piled up in the wings. By the end of the year, legal costs from the breach alone had ballooned past a whopping $42 million. The damage done was both legal and psychological, as users collectively panicked. People who had been once proud to share their DNA stories were now desperately trying to delete them. Even California's Attorney General urged residents to remove their genetic data. But even then, the damage was already done. Although you can change your password and delete your profile, can't change your DNA. By now, the breach had gutted the company's reputation. In March, the company filed for bankruptcy. They were burning through cash at a rate of $15 million a month, and bank accounts was running on fumes. At the same time, the company leadership was also predictably falling apart. All 7 independent board members resigned. Anne Wojcicki herself stepped down as CEO. She later tried to buy the company back. Her first offer was rejected, but on the second try, she came in with a new strategy using a non-profit shell called the TTAM Research Institute. She won the company back for $305 million, beating out a $256 million offer from the biotech giant Regeneron. So what exactly was she buying? Data. Millions of DNA profiles, the largest privately held genetic biobank in the world. That's what 23andMe had become. Not a revolutionary health company, instead just a pile of sensitive data, which in a sense makes the DNA of its former customers just Inventory. 23andMe promised to give you control over your health, a peek into your past, a tool for the future. Instead, it gave your most personal data to the market and lost control of it entirely. Anne Wojcicki had the vision, but what she didn't have was a plan that could last. A product that people only needed once is a product that is more likely to fail, no matter how good it is. And with the subscription model being tirelessly shoved down everyone's throat, it's no surprise people weren't into that concept either, which completes the 23andMe trifecta from hell, completely losing your private data, your trust, and your money. Because in a world of health and data, trust isn't just a nice to have, it's the foundation. They said your DNA would unlock your future, but the future it unlocked wasn't something they ever controlled.